Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the echo if there is one on the final recording. I am in a new conference room in my co-working space in Galveston, Texas. The sun is out today. It's beautiful. And I was very happy to take the morning off, go to the beach, go for a walk, come down here, get my decaf coffee, realize I didn't have my microphone or my good camera with me. So the camera shouldn't be an issue because nobody needs to see my pink face that close, but the microphone hopefully isn't. And what we were kind of catching up on was we're talking about like manifesting, but I know that that's a word that can
Woo
be
woo.
taken. It can be taken in many different ways. And I think a few weeks ago we were talking about how I cut most of my contracts down, or at least by 50%. And well, it's probably a month ago now, right? When I was talking about I got rid of all the people that I hated working with, and so that there was some obviously there was some concern there, because you lose 50% of income. It doesn't feel great, even though the mental pressure was nice, because then you want to fill that void. And I'm like, oh shit, well, now I have all this time. I need to go find more things to do, and inevitably probably end up working with more people I don't like, going and finding other things that would be the grass is always greener type situation. So oddly enough, that week or the 2 weeks after or so, I cut everything. We ended up a couple of contracts came through Sean, who I haven't met yet. He's in Mexico. So just talking in terms of not necessarily manifesting, but how things always tend to work out, whether that actually happens all the time and we don't always notice because we're not fixated on it or whatever, but it did work out where a couple of new things came in at just the right time. And you were talking about your other stuff that you've got going on. And I don't know that that's a real thing. I will say that it happens to me every single time. It literally happens whenever I'm worried about something and I'm short on something. It doesn't always have to be money, it could be something else. Somehow at the last minute, whether I'm subconsciously working towards it and I do things during my day that bring it about that I don't realize it, but it really does work. And it seems to be a very common experience.
I want to take that even further. I want to talk about the one on the hot seat session that we had yesterday. And obviously I can't go into too many details about it, but we had a hot seat session in the SHIP community. And it was a girl that was basically very well put together, very intelligent, and had so many different things going for her. And she just had all these belief systems that were stacked one upon the other that just basically left her absolutely stuck. And to go back to your point here, one of the biggest things I wanted to really, really get stuck in her head. And it's going back to my history when I finally decided to just leave what I was studying before, finance, and actually move into hypnotherapy. And at that point in time, I just felt completely alone because my whole family basically was like, what the hell are you doing? You worked for 4 years, you went through college, you did everything well, you got a job on Wall Street, you quit it, and now you've done nothing. And I remember just feeling so alone at that point in time, just like, what am I doing? Am I making a mistake? What's going on? And I didn't have my family to turn around to because I knew that if I turned around to them, the first words that would be out their mouth would be, I told you so. And I didn't want to hear that. So basically I was just stuck in my own head, and in my own head, I was catastrophizing everything. I'm going to end up living under a bridge. Everyone's going to laugh at me. I'm going to make this huge mistake. Why in the world did I leave everything that was so good for me? And I remember that I did actually talk to my one best friend from South Africa at the time. And he shared with me a thought that he shared with me once before. And it really changed everything in a really big way for me. And I shared it with a girl yesterday in the talk. And that thought is, you're too smart to fail for too long. And what that really meant to me, and at first I heard it and it wasn't a big deal, but what that really meant for me was the fact that life is going to throw you all these crazy curveballs. You're going to make bad decisions. You're going to go off track. Things are going to seem like everything is messed up for you. But at the end of the day, if you just believe in your resourcefulness and you believe that whatever goes on, you can make it through. And not to say you're not going to fail, but if you're smart enough, as you fail, you'll pivot and you'll come up with a new solution. And as you pivot from that, you come up with a new solution. And if you make that the story under which you live, I am too smart to fail for too long. It's not leading into this Pollyanna life of I'm never going to fail. And it's not leading into this Pollyanna life of everything is going to be great. Rather, what it's saying is when I do fail and when things aren't great, I'm smart enough to figure a way out of it. And I might fail again, and I might mess up here, and I might mess up there, but I'll figure my way out of that, and I'll figure my way out of that, and I'll figure my way out of that. And we had discussed this in a previous podcast, that there's actually a part in the human brain called the reticular activating system that basically tells the brain what to focus in on. Anything that you believe, the reticular activating system will choose to focus in on that. So if you have a belief in the back of your head of the world is a scary place and I'm in trouble, you're going to see everything in the world that is scary and prove to you that you're in trouble. But if you have the belief in the back of your head of I'm too smart to fail for too long, what's going to happen is you're going to see all the opportunities are starting to show up, and you're going to give those more attention because that's what your reticular activating system is saying is important. So what happens is something happens and your reticular activating system says, ooh, maybe this is my way out of it. And then something else happens and you go, oh yeah, you know what? That was wrong. And oh my God, life is such a mess. And then you see something else happen and you go, oh, maybe this is my way out of it because it's looking for it. And then this one starts going a bit further. And as it goes further, you go, oh, look, I'm starting to see a silver lining on the gray cloud. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're out of that tough situation because the sponsoring thought, the deepest thought that you had in your mind was, I'm too smart to fail for too long, or I'm resourceful and I'll be okay. Or as I shared with you before, my thought is, I don't do stress. And the thing I love about that is like, it's when something gets very stressful, I'm like, it's just a stressful situation, but I'm going to be okay and I'm going to be calm. So my reticular activating system says, what in my environment right now is not stressful. And it sees those things, and things don't tend to overwhelm me as much as they used to when I didn't have that story in my head. So on one level, people call it manifestation, and I'm not against that. Quite honestly, I strongly believe in the concept of manifestation, but to take it from a scientific point of view, whether you believe in it or not, your beliefs very clearly define what it is that you're going to see in your reality. And as you do, things start happening for you in that way.
As you're talking about seeing things because your brain's looking for it, and this is a really stupid example, but it's true for everybody. So for anybody who doesn't believe this, you've all been through this before. Like, okay, for example, I just bought an RV last week, a Class C RV motorhome, like a real redneck from Minnesota. I went and got. So, but the point is, now I'm seeing them everywhere, and I'm seeing little design things and everything else, and like things are popping up. I'm like, oh, I didn't notice this. Now, of course, my Facebook feed, I don't trust that because that's going to start showing me stuff because I'm talking about it. But it's true. Like, you go buy a certain car, and like never seen a red, Chevy Malibu or whatever. And then all of a sudden you see a bunch of them on the road. They were always there. These things were always there. Your brain just wasn't looking for them. So you're right. You put yourself in the mindset of things that you need to accomplish. Is it manifesting? Maybe in a sense. I mean, however you want to apply that word, I suppose. But those things were always there. You just weren't seeing them before. You weren't seeing the things that you needed before because you weren't open to seeing them before.
But imagine this, for example. Let's just say that you and your partner, right before you've got a party on a Saturday night, and right before you go out to a party, you guys get into a really big fight. And you're just sitting there saying, like, you know what? Like, I mean, this world just sucks. Everyone's just freaking fighting with me. Everything is terrible. And you go to that party, and in that party, there's 100 different people at the party. Your reticular activating system is going to specifically notice, oh, look, that couple over there, they're fighting. Oh my God, it's just like everyone's unhappy. Or look, it's like, look at that girl standing there by herself. Like, this is just such a lonely place. And if I were to pull you out that party like an hour later, and I were to ask you, what's that party like? You'd say, you know what? It didn't look like people were having a great time. Let's take the exact same person. I'm going to take it to an extreme just for the fun of it. And you give them ecstasy and you take them to a rave. You can have the exact same people fighting. You can have the exact same things happening, but because their serotonin is shooting through the roof, they're going to see everyone having the time of their lives. And I take them out of that. They go, that was the best party I've ever been to in my entire life. Exact same party, exact same circumstance. The only thing that changed is, what did the reticular activating system choose to focus in on based upon what chemicals you had going through your body, and what chemicals did you have going through your body? What your mind chose to focus in on that created those chemicals in the first place. It's such a powerful thing. And like, yeah, so for you, for the example, and everyone does this and everyone has seen it, the moment you buy the car that you think no one else has, you see it on the street and you go, there's nothing special about me anymore, right? It's just that normal thing. That is what the reticular activating system does. And to take this back to the story of the girl from yesterday, if you're stuck in the belief of, I'm not good enough, what you're going to do is you're going to see everything you do in your life that proves to you that you didn't succeed as well as you should have. If you've got the belief of, I'm doing the best I can and I really am a successful person, you're going to see the exact same things. Instead of you seeing, I got a C on a test and that means I'm a failure, you're going to say, I got a C on a test and now I know what to focus in on because I'm probably going to get a B next time. That's what the reticular activating system does.
It's funny that now I can, because learning it from you, I can actually, like, that's what's going on. I can actually explain it now instead of just thinking that, because, I'm not a super spiritual guy or anything like that. Even though I am coming around, I'm like, oh shit, this actually makes a lot more sense now. Speaking in terms of failing and how bad things can actually get, I don't recall, and of course I've got certain privileges, just by virtue of who I was born to and what country I was born in. And then I haven't struggled a lot, although, I went in the military and I've done hard things on purpose, but But I have a pretty great life. I got my health and everything else, but I've had some ups and downs, some rough patches and everything else. And I typically what happens, and this is true of about everybody I know, is that a really hard time. Let's say you go out to set up, start that new project, or you get fired, or you leave your job to go do something new, and it doesn't work out. Usually, the worst case scenarios, like, oh, I have to go back and live in my mom's house or go crash on a friend's couch, those typically end up being funny stories eventually. Like, hey, remember that one time that everything went to shit? I had to come stay. Like, it may feel scary at the time, but you're right. How bad can it really get? How bad can it really get? And you talked about this many times before, and you mentioned it yesterday. It's like, between all the public services and the technology these days, help is literally a few clicks away. You're going to eat, you're going to have somewhere to sleep. Most people have at least a friend or a family member. If you take it down as bad as it could possibly get, you're still going to be okay. And it's only going to be very, very temporary, right?
And I want to take this even further. And I mean, if you cut this out because you don't want to share this level of your private life with the world, I'm perfectly fine with it. But like, I do want to take this one level further. Like, here you are talking about your history and going like, I had a pretty blessed life. What the listeners probably don't know about you is that you in the service ended up leaving the service because you freaking got shot in the chest. Mister, I had a pretty great life, right?
Law enforcement. Yeah, that was law enforcement. Yeah. So that was my other job. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing I want to comment about that, I just forgot about the fact that I got shot in the chest in my job. Right?
I was wearing a bulletproof vest at the time, everybody.
And what I want you to pay attention to is the fact that you, through that, can still look at your career and say, I had a really great career. Think about how many people wouldn't have that view of things given what happened to you. And that is such a huge, 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 huge part of who you are in terms of the fact that you can actually look at your life and you can actually say, I had this blessed existence, where so many people would go through something that would be a quarter as bad as that and would say that completely ruined my life. And that is a huge difference. That is really, really a big difference in terms of like what makes you the resilient person that you are. And I mean, it's not to say that you're the Buddha that people need to sit at his feet, but like, I mean, a person that can look at your history and basically have a smile on your face and say, I was blessed, is a person that can really, really see things from a very resilient point of view. And that is an amazing, amazing skill you have. And I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but there's that old Zen fable about the farmer who the one day they wake up and their horse ran away. And I don't know if I shared it, but like if I didn't, I'm just going to share it again. So the farmer, they wake up one day, their horse ran away. And all their neighbors are going, oh my God, that was your strongest horse. That was your best horse. What bad luck. And the farmer goes, good luck, bad luck. Who knows, right? And 2 days later, the horse comes back because it was hungry. And it comes back with 2 additional wild horses. Like all the neighbors are like, oh my God, what good luck. And the farmer says, good luck, bad luck. Who knows, right? And then what happens is now they're wild horses. So the farmer's son decides he wants to try tame the horses so they can be used on the farm. So the farmer's son gets on the horse and tries to tame one of the wild horses. And the horse kicks him off and the son flies off, breaks his leg in a terrible way. And that was the farmer's son that was working on the farm. And the neighbors are going, oh my God, what bad luck. Your son is crippled now. And the farmer goes, good luck, bad luck. Who knows? Fast forward a few weeks after the son is healed, he can't work on the farm. He's kind of a cripple. And the kingdom goes into a huge war. And the king says, I need all able-bodied children, all able-bodied men to come fight in the war. And they come to the farmer's house. And the war is definitely going to be a lost war. And they come to the house and the son shows up and they say, oh, we can't take you. You're a cripple. And they go, oh my God, your son gets the chance to survive. He would have definitely died on that war. How lucky you are. And he goes, lucky, unlucky, good luck, bad luck, who knows? And the fact of the matter is, everything within a certain pigeonhole can look a certain way. But when you extend the timeline, things can seem very, very different, right? So the idea of you ending up on your parents' couch, being back with your parents can seem absolutely terrible in a moment, but you don't know how the whole story goes. I've got these friends right now, and I was actually saying I wanted to write an article about them, that they're in the States and they got here on a visa. And they're from Germany and they got here on a visa and they were able to travel in and out, whatever it was. So the wife went back to Germany to take care of some business. And while they were there, the United States government had some kind of issues and they basically shut down their visa completely. And the wife was stuck in Germany for a few months, basically. And they're so stressed out. They were going through the hell of their lives, going like, there's nothing we can do. We're separated and we're probably going to have to sell our house here and move back to Germany. Everything was going through hell. And they spoke to enough lawyers, and the lawyer said, probably the thing you need to do is this, where you need to apply for this kind of visa, which will lead to citizenship, etc. And They went through all this level of hell in terms of trying to deal with their visa. And then what happened was, listening to this lawyer, they applied for this new visa. They got this different kind of visa. And now they're on a fast track towards getting their permanent residency and citizenship. And they're saying it's the best thing that ever happened to them. And the thing is, the worst thing that ever happened to them while they were in it turned out to be something that they would never have done otherwise. That was an absolute stepping stone to the best thing that's now happening to them. And there's something so powerful about that the moment that you actually just step away from your story enough and say, I don't know how this is going to end. I get the fact that it's terrible right now. And you have that thought in the back of your head of, I'm too smart to fail for too long, or I have all the resources I need when I need them. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't make a difference. That's the whole thing. We're all living in a made up fantasy world. That's one of my main ways of looking at the world. We're all living in a made up fantasy world. That's just a fact. My question is the fantasy world you're creating, is it going to be a safe world to live in, or is it going to be a scary world to live in? So if it's already a made up one, make it into a safe world to live in, and you all of a sudden see that everything that's going on, I don't know how the story's going to end, but it will probably end up well for me because I'm too smart to fail for too long. And everything ends up looking so much better.
Yeah, and time horizons are tricky too. We think so much about the future. So for example, if you said, we're going to work on this next project for 6 months, I'd be like, oh, 6 months seems like a long time. But then if you were to ask me what I was doing 6 months ago, I'm like, oh, that just felt like yesterday. So like in our brains,
100%.
we make this big deal. Like, what do you mean I well, I can't do that. I can't exercise every day for this goal, for example, or write these many chapters for this book. You name it, insert life project here. It applies to everything. It's like, oh, that is so far away. I can't do that. And like, okay, well, you remember that thing we did 2 years ago? Like, yeah, that went by like that. But our brains are so screwed up. It just makes it so when you're saying like having something fails and you have to go spend some time on somebody's couch or whatever hardship you might have to go through that may seem like never ending and just miserable at the time, you look back on it, that was only a couple of weeks.
And yeah, and to let people into our personal stories to some degree, like, I mean, before this conversation, we were talking about human evolution movement, and I'm sitting there saying like, oh my God, like, I mean, we need to get this done and this done and this done. And at this time when we've got a time limit of we want to get everything done now, it can seem super, super stressful. Like, it's like, I mean, we have to get it done. Otherwise human evolution movement isn't moving forward. But when you look at it, the grand scheme of things, fast forward 5 years from now, and we're going to be, that actually went pretty darn quickly. Like, I mean, so it took us an extra 6 months. I mean, what's the big deal? And there's that saying, I got it originally from Tony Robbins, but I absolutely love it. In terms of the saying basically goes, man thoroughly overestimates what he can accomplish in 1 year and definitely underestimates what he can do in 10. So you think like, I got to get all this stuff done today because like, this is what happens. And this year I need to get so much done. But the thing is, like, if you just look on a wider timeline and you just say like, okay, fine. So I ended up on my parent and living with my parents again right now. And you sit there going, that means I'm a failure. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It means that you failed right now. You are not a failure. You are too smart to fail. Literally listen to the words, for too long. I'm not saying you're not going to fail. I'm not even saying that you're not going to fail for a while. You're just not going to fail for too long. That too long might be 3 months. It might be 6 months. It might be a year. But as long as you keep moving forward, you're too smart to fail for too long. Such a beautiful way of looking at the world. And it's just another story you tell yourself. You might as well live under the story that's more productive for you.
I'm also thinking about it from the dynamic of what are people going to think of me? What are my parents going to say? Because this is a little bit sidetracked, but parents, just by virtue of how they raise us since, we were babies or whatever.
Or whatever.
Scientific or whatever. But I think parents do have a tendency to always look at their children as children, even when we go home now, we go back to, Jesse's mom's place or my mom's, when they're talking about us, when we're in the same room, they're like, oh, the kids are back for 2 weeks. I'm like, fuck, but I remember my grandparents saying the same thing about my parents when I was around. The kids are back in town. The kids are 45, but you know what I mean? As friends. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, let's say I had to crash on somebody's couch or go back home and stay with one of my family members. I think in our minds, we're making it a way bigger deal than it is, when in fact, the other people, a friend we might have to ask for to crash for a little bit, or the family member that we might have to go stay with, and we're just using that one example, could be other things. They actually are probably happy to help, and they're probably happy that we're asking for help because they want to be able to help. People love to help other people. If I had a friend right now that was down and out, that was in town, or something happened, I would be like, it would make me feel good to go help that person with something, even though in their minds they may be thinking, oh my God, I'm putting this person out, they're going to think I'm a loser. So we do that too. We're in our own heads about that. Our parents and other family members, for the most part, they want to help us, and our friends do too, but we're thinking, oh, if I call this guy up and say I got to crash on his couch, he's going to think I'm an effing loser. But that's not the case, but we know we would do it for them, but why can't we do the same? We project.
And let's really, really examine that for a moment, because like this is so important. So like, I mean, two of my basic principles is like we just said. So number one is you're living in a made up fantasy world. And we discussed that a bit. And the second one that we've discussed ad nauseum too is the idea of you're immature. Let's put that one into perspective here in terms of how this works. When you are a young child and you're completely reliant on your mother for everything, or your mother and father for everything, you're in a place that like everything seems okay, but at some point in time, your parents need to create that level of distance from you. So what they say is, you can do this on your own, you can do this on your own, you can do this on your own. And that makes perfect sense when you are 2 years old, because that's what you need to learn. But if it's not done in a completely correct way, or if you're at that age, or between the ages of like, let's just say 1.5 and 8, where you're also teased by your siblings or teased in school or whatever it is, and you start having this thought of the fact that I need to prove to people how significant I am and how capable I am, because I've got to prove to mommy that I'm strong. You develop this complete logic in your head as a 3-year-old little child of, I need to be strong and self-sufficient completely because that's how I get my significance. Fast forward now to a 30-year-old that started failing in business, whatever it is. And it's crazy, but I've seen this over and over again. And I hope that this really, really settles into people's minds in as big a way as it really is. Literally, that 30-year-old that is afraid to go sleep in what's really going on is that there's a 3-year-old inside of their head saying, I got to figure this out by myself. I have to figure this out by myself. Otherwise, I'm a failure. Otherwise, I'm not significant and mommy won't love me. That's really what's driving this on the deepest level. What will they think? And that was created by a 3-year-old little child that was just given rules that made sense to a 3-year-old, but just doesn't make sense to a 30-year-old. So as an adult, the adult part inside of you that's 30 years old sits there going, I can sleep on a friend's couch. It's not a big deal. The 3-year-old sits there saying, if I can't do this by myself, I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to be accepted. But will eventually mean, in the large grand scheme of things, the way the 3-year-old thinks, it eventually means I'll be abandoned and dead, is where the 3-year-old takes that. And once you start healing that 3-year-old's way of looking at the world, and you actually get to the place of sitting there saying like, it's perfectly fine. I'm surrounded by resources and people that want to help me. And you calm that 3-year-old down and you sit there saying, these people want to help you. And the 3-year-old goes, no, I have to do it by myself. And you go, chill, kid. I get it. Listen to me. You are safe and these people will help you. And it's okay to ask for help. And it doesn't mean you're going to die. Once the kid locks that in and truly, truly feels safe asking for help, you go sleep on your friend's couch and you sit there going like, it's not a big deal. I'm too smart to fail for too long. But that immature part stops that from completely locking in until it absolutely does change for you.
Yeah, and you can make it a good time too. I was thinking about all the times in my life where I've had to crash on somebody's couch, usually because some whoever woman I was with at the time kicked me out. But I remember thinking those. I look back on all those moments where I was down and out, or I had to borrow somebody's car, or my parents up until a couple of years ago, at least my mom lived in the house that I grew up in, and it's a sizable house. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, but because of the area that it was in, it was just a large farmhouse. So there's like 4 rooms that are not being used. And I remember thinking all the little times that were really super stressful that I had to go borrow something from somebody, crash somewhere or whatever. It ended up being maybe not always the healthiest because like, wow, we're hitting the bars or whatever. But I look back on all those, I don't want to say fondly, but I remember they were all fun. I don't remember that what I thought going into it, the mental anguish I had, I don't remember feeling that at all before, during, or after. I remember just all the fun times that came out of it, which could be a defense mechanism. But I literally can't think back on any of those times and not think like how stupid I was to get myself worked up ahead of time for something that passed faster than I thought it would, and was actually ended up being a funny story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the way that the brain works in terms of the fact that when you look back on it in hindsight, you know for a fact that it wasn't that big a deal. Looking at it forward, that kid inside of you is saying, they're going, this time will be different. It's like, I mean, I really, really want people to lock this in terms of the fact that you literally are not thinking as an adult. You're thinking as a young child that is so afraid, literally, of death, that when you look at these things forward, you're afraid of upsetting people because if I upset them, then they're not going to love me. You're afraid of looking like an idiot because if I look bad, I'm going to get rejected. And to take it back to a conversation that we had with a girl yesterday, it's one of the big things that showed up for her that used to be one of my big things was that concept of she genuinely believed that if things didn't work out for her, she would end up living under a bridge and dying under a bridge. Should just be that should just go into that level of poverty and nothing would work out for her. And the one thing that I wanted her to catch on to was I needed her to grow that child up to see reality for what it is. And that's really what it is. It's like, it's just breaking that story. What I did was it's, as you know, you were there obviously, but like, I mean, for the listeners, all I did for her was I said, I want you to look at today's current reality where, as you said, you can pick up the phone, you can search on Google, need help with housing, and you're going to find 4,000 websites that will help you. You can reach out, you can find a counselor that can talk you through things. You've probably got a few friends that would let you crash on their couch if absolutely needed. And if not, there's enough social welfare programs that do it. There's food stamps available. There's so many ways to not end up living under a bridge, that the reality of living under a bridge is it only exists for that small, tiny sliver of the population that truly has some kind of a psychological issue that stops them from actually getting the help that they need, that have reached for the drugs or have gone so far down the path that they can't be helped. And even those people, if they just reach out in the right way, they'll go into a halfway house. They'll find a shelter. They'll find everything. In today's society, the idea of I'm going to end up in so much trouble to end up living under a bridge is just not a reality anymore. You're not living in 1800s where people died of cholera on the streets. It just doesn't exist anymore. It's not a reality.
If you got to the point where you have to live on the streets now and you actually went and did that, and then people found out, you know how mad people would be? Like, you didn't call me first. You know, you almost have to go out of your way to go. I'm not trying to be insensitive here, but you almost have to go out of your way to go sleep on the streets. There's so much available to you.
You're not being insensitive. You're just being realistic. And that's the whole thing here. It's like, I mean, like literally in order to fail at that level, it means that you are completely ignoring every resource in your life. And think that's basically your reticular activating system saying that there's no one here for me. There's nothing else. There's no way out of it. And to take this to the extreme in terms of certain people I've dealt with people that are suicidal. And what happens is the reticular activating system says, there's no way I can get out of this hole. There's no way in the world I can get out of this hole. So what they do is the reticular activating system focuses in on that. And they see, they live in their made up fantasy world of I'm stuck and there's no way out of it. So they quote unquote go to that party and they only see that portion of the party. And all I need to do with those people, like, I mean, regardless how terrible their lives are, is to just help them see one or two solutions. It's the one thing I'll say here. It's like, it's an interesting thing in terms of how the human brain works. And I think I actually mentioned this before. Language is very specific in terms of the fact that your language defines exactly what goes on inside of your brain. So when a person says, I can't see a way out, the moment I hear that from someone, what I actually hear is the exact wording of that. I can not see a way out. Basically saying they have the ability to not see a way out, to actually, I cannot see a way out. And what I ever need to do with that person is I'm like, so what would a way out look like? And all I'm doing to them in that moment is I'm having them now say, I can see a way out. And the moment I ask that question, I break the reticular activating system's functioning and I say, what would a way out look like? And they go, well, I guess in the craziest, grandest scheme of things, a way out would be this. And I go, okay, cool. And is there any other way? And they say, well, you know what? Maybe this, maybe that. There's really 3 steps to transformation that I absolutely love with this. And I call it the could I, would I, when will I? And I think I actually discussed this before, where the idea is when a person is stuck, they don't see any possibility. So like, let's just take a person that can't see a way out. So the very first thing I'll do with them in that moment is I say, in the grand scheme of the entire multiverse of possibilities and the entire universe, could you imagine a situation where there is a solution here? I'm not saying for you, I'm just saying in the grand scheme of everything that's going on, could you imagine a situation where you could succeed in this situation? And at first they say no, and I go, okay, fine, I get it. And I get that you can't see a way out, but let's play around. Like, let's just play a crazy imagination game. Could you imagine a way out? And they go, well, you know what? Maybe I could win the lottery. And I go, okay, cool. That's one solution. Is there another way? Could you imagine a different way out? Well, maybe this. And as soon as the brain opens up to the possibility of the could, everything changes already because it went from an impossibility to a possibility. I could see a way out. I could succeed. So to take this into something a bit more realistic, I'm fighting with my girlfriend and I can't fix this relationship. There's no way this relationship could be fixed. Okay, in the grand universe of all possibilities, is there a way that you could fix this relationship? No. Okay, fine. I get that. If you had the world's best relationship counselor and you had everything in your world and you had someone that could communicate to her in exactly the way that you needed, could you find a way out? Well, if I had the world's best relationship counselor and absolutely everything, I guess, yes, maybe we could fix it out. And if you could fix it up in just one way, could you see that your relationship could become better and better and better? No. Okay, fine. But imagine that you had the person living with you 24/7. Could your relationship become, yes. Okay, fine. I could see my relationship becoming better. Could you actually see that you two would actually be happy together? Well, yeah, if I had all that, yeah, I guess I could see it, but it's so impossible. It couldn't really happen, but yeah, okay, fine. In your grand scheme. Okay, fine. Let's play with a few more possibilities. Is there any other way that this could happen? And as soon as the brain opens up, and all of a sudden they say, well, I guess maybe if we did some marital counseling. And maybe if I wrote that tough letter to her. And I help them brainstorm different ways to go about doing things. And now all of a sudden they're open to the possibility of, I could change this. The next step of that is I would change it. So now it's moving from a possibility to an existing thing on their timeline. So I'm like, okay, fine. So now you know you could write her a letter. Would you ever write her a letter? Would you ever do the things necessary to make that happen? Would you ever find yourself a counselor? And now all of a sudden what they're doing is they move from the realm of possibility to imagining their future. Now they're going into, would I do this? And now they're going, I guess I would if she was willing to work on it too, whatever it is. And now what they're doing is they're starting to place the reality on their timeline as, if this happened and this happened and this happened, then I would do this and this would happen. What's going on now is the brain is now associating a reality to this. And then the final question is, when would you do it? When would you finally choose to do this? And then they say, okay, fine, you know what? Maybe after this tough conversation, or maybe tonight I'm going to have this thing going on with her. And now what happens is they actually slot it in their mental schedule. And you take a person from an impossibility to a possibility to a reality to their reality. And everything shifts from that point forth. Could I, would I, when would I? And it changes everything. And to me, that is almost like the driving force of manifestation.
This also really emphasizes how important it is to, even if you don't seek professional help, just talking to somebody. Because I do recall many days being in similar situations where it's like, gosh, when you have a problem, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this, you think you're the only one that can solve it. I can't explain this to somebody else. It's just too complicated. I know more about this particular issue than anybody else. And I would do what I thought were healthy things. I would go for long walks. I would avoid the bars and just keep turning it over and over in my head. I'm like, if I walk far enough, if I sleep on it enough times, the answer is going to come to me. Using my neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale as an example. And my buddy lived on a boat. I'm going to use this one time because it illustrates everything. And I would stop by the marina and I'm like, Greg, what are you doing? And we'd have a beer. And I'm like, I've been sitting and stewing on something and running it over in my head 300,000 times, whatever, over the last week. And then I brought it up to him, and within 3 minutes, he's like, oh, have you done this? Completely solved the problem. So as you're talking about that, it's not only the steps that you're outlining, but just sometimes you just got to get it out to another human being as well, because we all think like, oh, like you're saying, like they're so stubborn. Like, no, that can't happen. There's no way out of this, right?
Exactly. And there's so much I want to say about this, and this will actually be really practical for people in terms of actual things that they can do about it, right? It's back to that concept of, as long as you can't see a solution, you cannot see a solution. There's that saying from Albert Einstein, you're never going to fix a problem at the same level of thinking that created it. If you are so stuck in your head, you're thinking in the problem mindset. One solution for that that's worked out really well for me is just the concept of meditation, and that concept of trusting myself enough that it's somewhere in the back of my mind, I know that the question is stewing enough that I don't need to give it my total unreserved attention. I can let my unconscious work on it. And what happens is meditation pulls you away from that concept enough that your brain isn't sitting there saying, it can't happen, it can't happen, it can't happen, it can't happen. To that split moment that you don't say it can't happen, that your brain can pop up a solution and say, this is how it can happen. It's like, as long as there's that concept of like, the example that's very, very common is a person that basically sits there with their glasses on their face going, where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? I can't find my glasses anywhere. And as long as they're sitting there saying, I can't find my glasses anywhere, they're never going to notice where they are. But the moment that they stop looking, or someone points it out to them, as you said, and they go, oh, duh, could have had a VA, right? Like, it's that simple moment, right? It's like, it's that simple that sometimes the easiest thing that you need to do is just step out of your own way and stop thinking in the problem mindset. So the one solution to that is to literally stop thinking about it, to just reset, whether that means just go to sleep and forget about it. And something that's worked out really well for me and my clients that I've done very often is I'll write down my entire problem. It's kind of like the piss and vinegar journaling that I talk about in the Emotional Alchemy Journal. But I'll write down my entire problem in very graphic detail, and I'll say the whole problem, and then I'll just fold it up on a piece of paper, and I'll just put it under my pillow, and I'll say I'm just gonna sleep on it. Literally sleep on it. And I'm like, it's out there. I don't need to keep thinking about it because in the morning I can read the piece of paper, so I don't need to worry I'm gonna forget something. And then I can completely turn it off, and my brain can just go off on its own little tangent and think about things in a new way. And sometimes just turning off the momentum of being stuck in a problem can fix it. So whether it's meditation or something else, it does that. Your example of talking to a friend, amazing solution, because it's literally doing the other thing. You're just getting a different perspective. And it helps if you trust that person and you have good rapport with them, that they can tell you the solution. Because one example is a person that says, I can't see my glasses, I can't see my glasses. And their little kid says, Mommy, it's on your face. And you go, yeah, whatever, kid. But if your friend says, hold on one second, Lee, look on your face, it makes a big difference. So if you trust the person, that can make a big difference. The one thing I'm going to say, just in today's modern era, the one thing that's really worked out really, really well for me is I've created custom chat GPTs where I literally have something I can talk to and state my problem in the most profound way possible. And I can just get a complete external opinion for free. And it sometimes is better than a counselor. And it exists for free nowadays for people to do it, like where you can just state your problem. And if you just don't have a good solution, start a new chat GPT and you'll get a brand new chain of thought around it. There's so many solutions nowadays, again, to the fact that like you can completely change your way of thinking in such easy ways. One of them is through a friend, but if you don't have friends, open up chatgpt.com. It's like life is good. Write it down on a piece of paper and meditate and just let yourself go, just completely let go of it. But you're never going to solve your problem at the same level of thinking that created it.
I love that. At least it gets you thinking outside of the track that you were on. Because that's
Amen.
the problem, is that people get stuck because we think we're figuring it out and we think we're getting somewhere, but we're not. We're just going in circles in our own heads.
Just one step further. I mean, when we talk about the psychedelics, that's the thing I love so much about psychedelics in terms of the same thing, because psychedelics specifically stop your neurons from firing in the same way that they did a moment before. It's like, I mean, obviously this is a crazy thing, and I'm not necessarily saying if you got a problem, take psychedelics at home by yourself. But when a person is really, really stuck, that's why, for example, I love GPRR, where I can specifically get them out of such a stuck mindset, where you've got a person that is just so stuck in their depression that regardless what therapist they talk to, regardless what it is, their brain can't actually conceptualize an answer. They're just too stuck. And in those situations, that's when, for example, you do something like GPRR, where you specifically just stop the brain from being able to go down the same path, and you just show them their resourcefulness. And finally, you're no longer thinking at the same level that created the problem, because your mind won't allow you to, because it's actually physically been changed to not be able to in that moment.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we got some exciting stuff coming up as far as some retreats that we'll be collecting interest for and waiting lists for, because we want to make sure we make it the best experience possible for everybody, and more to come on that. So we'll have full informational videos out on all of that, and a nice page that people can view. For now, it's still under development. I mean, it's something you've been doing for a very long time, but we're finally going to take it at scale, in the sense that it'll be available to people that just don't know you from your practice. So it'd be very exciting to do that. So again, we do really appreciate everybody who likes and subscribes. We have so many things coming up that I can't even list them all right now because I can't remember them all, but we literally got together a few weeks ago and outlined and filmed content for all the new projects we have coming up. So we'll appreciate everybody's feedback on that. As always, please leave comments down below, anything you want us to cover in a future show. And we'll catch you guys in a week. To be continued.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Lee.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. Ever wondered how journaling could help change your life? You can find out by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. It's a powerful tool for deep self-reflection, and it's completely free. And if you're looking to connect with Ori and learn more about how he can help you, visit his website at OriGoldstein.com. A link will also be in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.